Welcome to Financial Issues with Shana, where we join reality with truth, helping you to make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now, here's your host, Seth, sitting in for Shana.
Good morning, everybody. Great to be back with you once again here on Financial Issues. We're live this next hour, so I hope you'll join us. Call in 610-363-1110 wherever you are listening or watching. Happy to have you here this Rapid Fire Friday, June 7th, 2024. Let's get right to it here, folks. We just got a big payrolls report that we'll get to momentarily here, but let's take a look at the markets first. So yesterday, the major indices, while awaiting this morning's jobs report, were little changed throughout the day. Remember, we had a big day of trading on Wednesday. NVIDIA really pushed the stocks into positive territory. By midday Thursday, though, the benchmark indices were kind of well within the range of the flat line, and that's where they ended up at the end of the day. So by Thursday's closing bell, the Dow Jones was the lone winner, only up 1/5%. The S&P 500 was right at the flat line, right below it. Same with the NASDAQ. They really didn't change much throughout the day. 10-year Treasury yields were down under 4.3% at the close. Those Treasury yields have since gone up this morning because we did just get a very important payroll report. Non-farm payrolls increased by a whopping 272,000. That's more than the 190,000 expected for the month of May and up 165,000 for the month of April. It appears that the jobs market is better than expected here, and the market's not really sure what to do with that, as we saw bonds are up now, up over 4.4%. Meanwhile, the pre-markets, which were relatively muted early this morning before Bible study, they have now gone down a little bit. Down the Dow futures, the S&P, and the NASDAQ are each right around 0.4% in the negative. So we'll see what that does to the markets today on this final trading day of the week. But that's what we got for May payrolls there. A couple more notes about that payrolls number. The jobless rate was 3.7% for the same period in 2023, and the number of unemployed people was 6.1 million. The number of long-term unemployed, those jobless for 27 weeks or more, was 1.4 million in May. That accounted for just over 20% of all unemployed individuals. The labor force participation rate was at 62.5%, and the employment population ratio was at 60%, little changed for the month of May, and those changes showed little change over the year as well. Elsewhere, folks, on the markets here, I mentioned NVIDIA earlier. At the end of the trading day today, the tech giant is going to execute its 10-for-1 stock split. We actually had some questions about this in the last couple weeks of the show, I believe it was, and I apologize, I don't have the exact show on me for when that question was asked and answered. A couple of those were, but I'll try to find that during this break coming up here. But that stock split will be finalized today after the market closes. It's a 10-for-1 split. Keep in mind, this company has returned 205% over the last 12 months, 580% over the last 3 years. And the split means that shareholders will get 9 additional shares for each share that they own. And it will start trading on this basis on Monday, June the 10th, so next week. We also got the goods and services trade deficit. That widened to $76.4 billion in April. I don't think that's a surprise for us. April exports increased $2.1 billion from the previous month. April imports were $338.2 billion. That's $80 billion more than the March reports. Year to date, the goods and services deficit increased $5.5 billion. That's about a 2% increase from the same period of 2023. Exports increased year-to-date just over $32 billion. That's about 3.2%. And year-to-date imports increased 37.8, almost $38 billion, or up 3% roughly. Average goods and services deficit increased about $2.5 billion to roughly $70.7 billion for the first 3 months ending in April. Again, we mentioned at the top of this week here, folks, that this was going to be a big week in terms of jobs, and we saw that this week. We also got the productivity costs for Q1 of 2024. The non-farm business sector productivity rose only slightly, 0.2%. Output increased just under 1%. Hours work increased about 0.6%, so not much there. Non-farm business sector labor productivity increased about 3% year over year. That's actually the largest year-over-year increase since Q1 of 2021. That was when the measure rose almost 6%. Unit labor costs in the non-farm business sector, those increased about 4.0% in the first quarter of 2024. And that reflected a 4.2% increase in hourly compensation, as well as a 0.2% increase in productivity. Unit labor costs increased 1% over the last 4 quarters. One more headline to get to here, folks, and this will actually kind of tee up, potentially, if we have time this segment, our first question for the day here. That headline is the United States is now launching an antitrust probe into several corporations, including NVIDIA, who we mentioned earlier, as well as OpenAI and Microsoft. So the DOJ and the FTC have launched a joint antitrust investigation into these corporations. This investigation, folks, is basically the latest in a series of regulatory probes into artificial intelligence, and it also includes risk assessments to consumer production at OpenAI and a comprehensive review of deals with AI startups. Now, the DOJ will investigate NVIDIA as well, while the FTC will examine the deals between Microsoft and OpenAI. Something to keep in mind about this, folks, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Alphabet, and Apple now account for nearly a quarter of the S&P 500. So, I think it makes sense why this probe is happening. I'm always a little bit leery whenever government has this kind of what seems to be overreach into the business sector. I do understand it for sure. I understand it for 2 reasons. Number one, just because of how much clout these companies have over the entirety of the markets. And number 2, I'm not sure I trust AI at this point. So I do understand. I think there's a lot of people in the government who feel the same way. It's kind of uncharted waters, this whole AI thing. And again, I've talked about this on the show before, that I'm not sure what kind of danger could be behind AI, even in terms of a spiritual perspective as well. So that's what's happening there. Just wanted to keep your eyes on that, folks. We got a great show today, so I hope you'll hang with us here. Shana's going to join me in segment 2, and we'll also get some timeless wisdom from our founder, Dan Celia, coming up later in the show as well. We'll get to your calls of questions, of course, as well, since it is Rapid Fire Friday, and I think it would be appropriate, as it is Rapid Fire Friday, to actually start with one of those. So we got this question submitted in the chat a few days ago. Grant, why don't we get to Brian and Kara's question there from Illinois?
All right. Their question asks, how has the market accounted for the current political unrest? What is your opinion of the market going forward?
Boy, that's a good question, B&K, and I'll start with your first one here. I think it's a tough question to answer simply because political unrest is not always a driving factor in the equity markets. Sometimes it is, for sure, but it's not always one. Now, I'm assuming what you're referring to with the current political state and the political sphere of the country and how that impacts the economy. And in that sense, I think my opinion would be the answer is no, the market has not accounted for that, because there is a lot of political rest in this country, and the market continues to trend upward. I think there are some dangerous forces at play, and there are some other things at play as the markets continue their trend upward. Now, one thing to remember, B&K, it's really important. While the market can be truly reflective of what's going on in the economy in reality, it's not a perfect reflection ever. And oftentimes it's not really an accurate reflection either. Because remember what the market is based upon, folks. It's not based upon facts as much as it is emotion, prediction. We talk about fear and greed often, but especially emotion and prediction. That's really what the markets are based on. So if you read the last partner commentary, Brian and Kara, and I would encourage you to, if you're not a partner, to become one, but read Shana's partner commentary from June 3rd. Basically, in that commentary, Shana talks about how there seems to be some overvaluation in the equity market. I don't want to spoil it for you. Go ahead and read it. But the markets are shooting upward at the same time as the economy seems to be like a tinderbox, one small spark away from an explosion. This is not in any way to spark fear in any of you, but it's to look at what's going on. So to answer your question, B&K, I would tell you, go read Shana's commentary from June 3rd. I think that really explains a lot what you're asking for. As for your second question, I actually think that also has a lot to do with your second question about the opinions of the market going forward. As we've seen, the markets have experienced great success, but that success has largely been driven by a select few companies in a select few sectors. That headline we just mentioned about this antitrust probe into some of those companies, they have driven the markets upwards. It has really been on the engine of those. So I think a good opinion of the markets, B&K, moving forward is kind of a healthy mix of caution and calmness. You know, we're due for a natural correction, and corrections aren't always fun, but they are natural. Sometimes that happens. The markets ebb and flow. They go up, they go down. It can also offer opportunities, to be sure, as well, when the markets go down. So don't despair if they do go down. Brian and Kara, I hope that was helpful for you there. I see more of you coming in on the chat. It's great to see you this morning. We'll get to more of these questions. Shana Bird coming up next year with me. We got more financial issues on Rapid Fire Friday, 610-363-1110.
Samaritan is direct sharing of medical needs. So every month, members are sending their checks or maybe electronic payment directly to another member that had a medical need. And so that helps it be much more affordable because it cuts out the middleman, and it also provides incredible flexibility for our members to make healthcare choices that they want to make, their healthcare dollars spent the way they want to spend it. So it's not their employer, it's not the government, it's them making the decision.
So I guess it is a little bit of a financial stewardship decision because, you know, I personally have been using health sharing for a long time, and when I got off of the treadmill of traditional health insurance and switched to health sharing, my family saved a lot of money on our monthly premium costs just to stay protected.
Head over to financialissues.org/highlights to catch the complete interview and learn more about Samaritan Ministries.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. We're so glad that you're here today learning how to be a biblically responsible investor, learning how to honor God in all of your stewardship decisions, not just with your money, but in all areas of your life. So one of the things that we are given to steward, if we are so blessed, is young people, children, right?
Amen.
And not just if they're our own. We have nieces and nephews and all of those other relationships that we so treasure. Our stewardship verse today comes from Matthew 18:5-6. Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me, but whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a great millstone fastened around his neck and to be drowned in the depth of the sea. Seth, what do you think?
Well, first of all, it's a terrifying way to go.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want that for me. You know, Shana, we talk often about how this verse applies to the mistreatment of children, and it absolutely does, especially believing children. But, you know, our Lord is talking not just to children here, but to all believers, talking about describing the treatment of believing Christians at the hands of those who are supposed to shepherd them. So the context of this is really false teachers. And he's saying, if anyone is a false teacher and causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, so leads them down a path to sin, it would be better essentially for this person to be dragged by the neck down to Davy Jones' locker. It is a horrible, horrible way to go. But the reality is, this is the price that is paid for doing something like this. Now, some detractors might say, isn't this unloving for the Lord to say this? I mean, Lord, you know, the Lord Jesus, peaceful, kind, loving, and he's saying people need to be drowned in the sea. Quite the opposite, Shana. The job of the shepherd is to protect the flock from wolves, and we see countless wolves in our midst today, even in the church. And it's a really, really sad thing.
That's what the staff was for, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, that shepherd's staff was meant not just to lead the sheep, but also to defend the sheep from wolves.
To lead the sheep, not beat the sheep,
Right,
but to
exactly.
beat the enemies.
That's exactly right. And so, Shana, this week we've been looking at the pride shenanigans in corporate America.
Yeah.
And I thought it might be appropriate for us to move out of corporate America today and look at how this stuff is infecting
So we're not
the
talking about the
church.
Trevor Project anymore?
Well, I don't think so. I hope not. Well, unfortunately, it could be even worse than that.
Yeah.
But we're looking at how the pride movement has infiltrated and poisoned the church of all places, and it's really, really sad.
Yeah, it is.
Just egregious.
So what's going on there?
So the first one that I wanted to mention was the Episcopal Church, which for folks who don't know, the Episcopal Church is really the American version of the Anglican Church. The Anglican Church was started in the 16th century as part of the Protestant Reformation, very similar to the Catholic Church. The Episcopal Church is just the American version of that. The Anglican Church, sadly, is one of those mainline denominations that went woke generations ago. Well, this year for Pride Month, it offered for the first time congregations to use, in place of the longtime denominational logo of St. George's Cross, a rainbow pride-themed shield logo. Now, if you know anything about history, Shana, St. George was the famous Christian martyr from the 3rd century who, legend has it, he slayed a dragon in England and actually became the patron saint of England. They're taking this beautiful picture of Christian history and obviously the cross of Jesus Christ and profaning it with a rainbow flag. It is disgusting. I consider this to be an apostate church. I don't think they're a legitimate church. They're actually now, I believe, worshiping a dragon. Speaking of St. George and the dragon, in place of the Lord, it's the dragon.
And not the rainbow from the flood,
That's right. It's not the rainbow from the flood. Exactly right. The dragon from Revelation 12, serpent from Genesis 3, the devil. It's really, really shameful. And then one more I wanted to mention for you, Shana, is one that hits close to home for me with family members in this congregation is the United Methodist Church, which for a long time had upheld the biblical doctrine of marriage by a thread. At this past general conference 1 month ago, the church openly abandoned biblical Christianity in its May general conference. They voted over 90% to allow gay clergy to be pastors. So obviously these people aren't pastors, but they're calling them pastors. I heard an article.
They're pastors of something.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, of a false gospel. It's funny. It's not funny. It's really sad that the United Methodist Church is no longer united because they have now split basically evenly. And they're no longer Methodist either because they've abandoned the biblical foundation from their founder, John Wesley. And they're now no longer a church, sadly, either because they've abandoned biblical doctrine.
You know, that is sad.
Yeah.
And, you know, how does that really tie into what we talk about every day here at Financial Issues? Because we've been talking about the corporate shenanigans and, you know, these companies funding organizations that are leading our little ones down a path of lies that leads straight to hell. Yeah. And, you know, it reminds me of an old video that I saw with Dan. He interviewed some really great people, and what the gist of it is that the responsibility really lies on the pastors, because what happens in the pulpit infiltrates to the pews and then infiltrates into society. Yep. And it's unfortunate now that what's happened in society has infiltrated the church, and you know that doctrine of demons is now going to infiltrate into whatever congregations will follow them and then flow back even more into society. So it's really a sad thing. And that's why we exist. That's why organizations like Financial Issues, you know, we technically are what's called an association of churches as our nonprofit structure goes. And, you know, a church is really anytime the body of Christ assembles. Now, we do encourage you to be members of a Bible-believing, Christ-professing local church.
Right. Not one of these churches, not an apostate church,
Right. And if this is happening in your church, I think you have some really tough decisions to make, you know, because you probably love the people that you go to church with, but you really can't align yourself under this kind of leadership. So it's a sad thing, but it was predicted in the Bible. You know, that old antiquated book that doesn't apply to today.
Yeah, right. Boy, it sure does, doesn't it?
It does, as it talked about that in the Signs of the Times, which we talk about here all the time. So, you know, even more reason for you to become a member of Financial Issues for just $132 a year. Not only just to get, you know, good, sound investment advice, but a way to help you honor God in the way that you invest, so that we can continue to be here every day. So we want to welcome you into the Financial Issues family. We hope that you will go to financialissues.org and check that out and learn how to fight back against the darkness that is even invading our churches.
Absolutely. You know, Shana, I mean, we talk about it often, biblically responsible investing. Dan used to say it, you say it. It's a conviction of the heart.
It is.
And if it's not grounded in what is true, it's not going to work.
Right.
And what we're seeing here clearly is the heart of these churches is they have left their first love. They have abandoned the God of the Bible, and they're now pursuing a false God. And that's part of why biblically responsible investing is so important. If it's not biblical first, it's not going to work.
Right.
So really important there.
Right.
Good reminder.
It may seem to work for a short period of time, but one day we'll have to answer to the master when he comes back, because he's coming back. And he's going to ask us how we handle the time, talent, and treasure that we were trusted to manage. And, we want to be here to help guide you and lead you so that you can give a good answer, so that you can tell the Lord, you were my first priority. I wanted to honor you in everything that I did. And so that's why in the way that I invested, I did it biblically responsibly.
Amen. Good stuff, Shana. Let's get to some partner questions, as it is Rapid Fire Friday after all.
Right.
Dave is 64. Dave is saying, can you talk about how high-yield bond mutual funds work? He's specifically asking about FI55. How and when do they pay out? Is there quarterly dividend? The fact sheet for this fund says it's returned 10.8% in the last year. Does this mean the value of the fund grew 10.8%, or does it mean that it paid out 10.8% in cash in that year? What do you think, Shana?
So the return that you're going to be looking at, if you're looking at a yearly return, is going to be your total return. So mutual funds or stocks in general can make money in one of two ways. And these particular bond funds, the way that they work is they pool together investor money. So when you buy shares in there, the fund managers are going to follow the rules set forth in the prospectus, according to the objective of the fund, which this particular one is a Timothy fund. So it's the first rule is that it has to be biblically responsible. So it's going to buy positions in different bonds with this pool of money, and then those bonds are going to do what bonds do. They pay income, and they pay on a regular basis. And so depending on whether the fund distributes their dividends quarterly, some do quarterly, some do monthly, but they'll pass through the dividends the interest that is collected from the bonds, and they'll pay that out. That's known as the yield of the fund. And then you can also have price appreciation or depreciation. The share price of your mutual fund can go up or down based on the underlying value of the bonds. So in a rising interest rate environment, bond prices tend to go down. They behave in opposition to what interest rates do, and vice versa. When interest rates start to go down, bond prices start to go up. So if they actually sell out of any of their bonds to capture some of that gain, that does get passed through to mutual fund investors as well in the form of a capital gains distribution. And that typically happens in the last 2 or 3 months of the year.
Sorry, Shana, I was gonna jump in there if you had any more there.
Nope, go ahead.
Awesome. Very good. Next question we have is Anna. Anna's saying, when I buy the stock after changing to a new brokerage group, do I buy the same stocks again? I'm vigilant to only have the stocks FISM has on their buy broad list and have sold off those which went woke. The reason I ask is several of the stocks I bought when I was employed and bought several years ago, I'm now in the 65 and up group now. One example is CD23. Should I buy the stock again? It's performed rather poorly for me. What do you think, Shana?
Okay, so I don't have my list in front of me. I don't know which one exactly CD23 is, but I can still answer the question. If you change brokerage firms, you shouldn't have to rebuy anything, because you should be able to, it should just come over as an in-kind transfer. But then I keyed in on the word employed. So what I'm thinking is that Anna owned some positions in a 401k or employer-sponsored retirement plan, and then rolled over, having to liquidate all of the positions. So if in Anna's case she's moving to a different asset allocation model, it's probably, and you're already in cash, it's probably a good idea just to start over and go with what is currently on the buy list and go into those positions, following the strategy over the next, I'd say 4 to 8 months.
Awesome. Good stuff there, Shana. That's great. Thank you for answering those questions. I think we're running out of time for this segment.
All right. Well, folks, thanks for joining us for Financial Issues. We hope that you'll stick around because we've got more to come. We are going to take a short break. We encourage you to find out more about defunding darkness through biblically responsible investing and funding the light, being a joyful and generous giver at financialissues.org. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back.
Here at FISM News, our mission is to provide you with news from a source you can trust.
The news is a constant reminder that this world is not our home. It is marred by sin, resulting in wars, brokenness, and divisiveness.
Jesus promised that he will return soon to judge sin and make all things new.
Until then, we place our hope in him.
This is the good news, the most important truth we feel compelled to share.
Through the ministry of Preborn, the Financial Issues family has saved tens of thousands of lives of babies. What an amazing job that God has done through you, the Financial Issues family. Would you join us in saving the lives of babies? What an amazing reunion we will have in glory, meeting all the people that we have saved. Please go to preborn.org, that is preborn.org, or financialissues.org, and click on the Preborn banner.
In the last 10 to 15 years being in ministry, being married, something that has been constant in our lives is Samaritan Ministries. As we've moved, we've had babies, we've had different things come up, we have just been able to rely on Samaritan in ways that we never really even thought about before becoming members.
Our heart's desire is to plant roots and be in a place for a really long time. It's how we were raised. We see the benefits of that, but we also see the open-handedness of being used by the Lord wherever he calls, because we just assumed when we started pursuing church planting, the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. And with the Lord, sometimes you find out it looks a lot more like this. And yet, Samaritan was with us through the entire thing.
We didn't have to look into, we have to change insurances now because we've moved states or whatever the case may be. And it's just been a real blessing to us in different phases of life.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Colleen.
We're the Gen X.
And we're Samaritan members.
I just love the first book of Exodus. The king says the Jews are too many. Get rid of them. I command you to kill the firstborn. But the midwives to the Hebrews heard the order, and what did they do? They defied it. And God dealt favorably with the midwives and gave them families. He blessed them for loving life. He blessed them for saving babies. We have re-entered the death cult in this country. You think about how much we elevate death, whether it be the chopping off of parts and we call it transgender care, whether it be shouting our abortion, and you see it so beautifully in John 10:10. It is the divide of the entire scriptures. Now, most people would say John 3:16, but think about it. The enemy has come to lie, steal, cheat, and destroy. I have come to give life and life more abundantly. That's the whole ball game, everybody. It is everything. And we have to have the joy of Jesus Christ to enjoy life and to protect it. It's a gift from above. And Preborn is leading the charge.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only, and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it, and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues, folks. Good to be here with you. Rapid Fire Friday. The market's just opened here, and as expected in the pre-markets, everything is down. Not too terribly, but it's down pretty. It's somewhat down. Dow Jones down a fifth, S&P 500 down 0.3, and the Nasdaq is down a third. So that's coming off of that jobs report that we mentioned in the first segment. There, you can go back and listen to it if you missed it. But that's what we're looking like there. Folks, I've mentioned this week, now's graduation season, and it's a great time for you to, if you're looking for a good gift for a graduate in your life, college graduate, high school graduate, gift them a partnership. We are trying to raise up a new generation of biblically responsible investors. And the way to do that organically is to funnel that growth through our current generation. And so to teach all of you to raise up that next generation, people my age and younger who maybe have no clue about what biblically responsible investing truly is. And so a great way to do this is to gift a partnership for someone who has just graduated. Tell them, hey, listen, you're gonna need to be able to start building some wealth. And also you're gonna want to do it in a way that honors God. That's the only right way to do it. Great thing to do is gift them a partnership for $132 a year. I have not mentioned this often recently as well, folks, but we still have some spineless weasels, or should I say no more spineless weasels mugs in stock. If you would like one of these and you want to give a gift of any amount to our ministry, we would encourage you to do that. And you can get your hands on one of these amazing exclusive No More Spineless Weasels mugs so that you can make sure that people know how frustrated you are with the spineless weasels in Washington. So make sure to do that if you're interested. Just give a donation to the ministry and put in the subject line, I'd like a spineless weasels mug. That would be great. Please pray for us as well. Next week we're going on NRB TV, so we're excited for that. If you want to watch us on NRB TV, if you have DirecTV, we're channel 378 is NRB TV, and we'll be airing every day at 2 o'clock Eastern time on NRB TV starting on Monday. So that's an exciting thing for us as we expand the reach of financial issues. Well, folks, let's get to some wisdom here from Dan Celia. Great foundational wisdom. This first clip is a formula on retirement. So Dan talks about just some really good wisdom for trying to plan for the future. If you recall, this past week, we talked about the concept of time value money. Jason McDowell came on with Shana and just talked a little bit about what time value money is. This has to do a little bit with that. So here's Dan Celia continuing that conversation there, talking about retirement.
Talking about a formula for retirement needs, that's what Angela was talking about. And let me say real quick, Angela, you heard me say there's no cookie cutter. You've got to do based on figure out in today's dollars, how much money you're going to need to retire. And I mean income. Then use a number, say, well, I have this much money saved. I can probably earn 4 to 5% on that money every year consistently. Is the 4 or 5% going to be enough to supplement my income? And that's what you have to look at. And so if the number you used that you're saving up to is going to be enough at 4 or 5% supplement your income, then that's fine. If it isn't, then you're going to have to up that a little bit. But you've got to subtract out the income that you know you're going to get from Social Security, an income from maybe a pension, an income from maybe a 401k that you're going to be able to add to that. So you've got to factor all that in. But I'm not going to give a cookie cutter approach saying, well, look, if you're 32 years old and you save 10% of your income between now and the time you retire, you're probably not going to have anything to worry about unless you live a very extravagant life. And in that case, try to save 20.
Next one here we have, folks, talking about credit card woes. Dan talked a lot about this, and this continues today. Many of the stats that he mentioned from this clip, which I believe was from 2020, they're all the same today. So these records that we're hitting for credit card debt and things like that, we've hit those, we've exceeded those, and the records continue to be broken with every passing year, it seems. Here's some more wisdom from Dan Celia.
Total credit card balances increased by $46 billion to $930 billion. That's a record high. We have almost $1 trillion worth of credit card debt. Come on, people. The previous peak, which wasn't this high, was in 2008. What happened in 2008? We had the same abundance of enthusiasm through 2006 and 7, and it came to an end in 2008 that we have today. We had the financial crisis. So according to the Federal Reserve in New York, the portion of credit card debt in serious delinquency meaning payments are later than 90 days or more, rose to the highest level in almost 8 years. Wait a minute. Here's the worst part for me. The serious delinquency rate for borrowers of between the ages of 18 and 29, so I guess this is the X-Jenners and the baby boomers, you 19 in debt, from 18 to 29 years old, rose to the highest level since the end of 2010. Come on, people. Please, stop. Look, the credit card debt that you can't pay even in 90 days is going to haunt you for the rest of your life. You're 18 to 29. You haven't even bought a house yet. You haven't raised a family. You still have student loan debt. You haven't gotten married. You haven't done a lot of these things yet. And your credit card debt is already out of control. You are going to become a slave to your credit card. Everything turns negative in your life. You will have a negative attitude about everything. That negative attitude will impact you on the job. That's going to make your opportunities on the job worse because you're the guy with a negative attitude or girl with a negative attitude. You're going to be miserable. Maybe you have some friends that are going out to dinner tonight. You can't go because you don't have any money. Take the stinking credit cards and cut them up, throw them away. That doesn't cut up what you owe. You bought this stuff, now you got to pay it back. Get it paid back as quick as you can. You have a car, start driving with Uber. Go out, get some extra money. Give yourself 2 hours a night to Uber a little bit. Oh, that's hardly anything. I'm going to make $40. It means a lot when it's going to the credit card company as principal. Whatever you have in your apartment, in your household that you don't need, cut it out. Save the money. Get it to your debt. Look, in 2 years, 3 years, you're going to have that debt paid off probably sooner. It's an insignificant amount of time at your age. You can't let this rise anymore. You got to get rid of it.
Well, speaking of debt, folks, it's not just individuals, and we do talk about individual debt on this show a lot, but also corporate debt. Dan talks about that once more in this clip. Here's more foundational wisdom from our founder, Dan Celia, now on corporate debt.
I really can't comprehend this, to be honest with you. I find it amazing that corporations are racking up debt again. You know, I don't know if you remember. I remember it all too well at the end of 2008. All through 2009, corporations were deleveraging in dramatic fashion. Deleveraging. Of course, then money went to pretty much free to borrow money, and they leveraged back up again, and they've been leveraging up since. And the same is true, by the way, folks, for the consumer. Consumer was doing the same thing in 2008, 2009, even into 2010. Deleveraging, getting out of debt. Now we're racking that debt back up. The average interest rate on a credit card debt is up to 17%. This is insanity. It's up to 17%. And God forbid, should you be late on one payment, it's going to go up to 23%, which is basically legal loan sharking. Needless to say, banks are doing very, very well as consumers seem to be more and more willing to get in more debt, even at these higher costs. This is insane. I don't have a problem with using credit cards. It's a convenient way to travel. But if you got revolving credit, folks, you need to work on it. And if you're not working on it, you need to start working on it. 17% interest. It's insane. I can't even imagine spending that. You got to just buy what you need based on what you have in your checking account and can write a check for or use a debit card.
I guess a good lesson for this segment, folks, is to live within your means if you can. And not just if you can, anyone can. Anybody can live within their means. A moron can live within his means. Live within your means. It's a very simple thing to do. It's a good thing to do there. I hope you enjoyed that wisdom there from our founder, Dan Celia. Coming on the other side of this break, folks, we'll get to the Ag Report for today. Thank you for your prayers for Craig. He is home. We'll be giving you the Ag Report live here, as well as we'll also be answering at least one more partner question, getting to your questions here on Rapid Fire Friday. If you want to join the conversation, there's still time, folks. 610-363-1110, 610-363-1110. We'll be right back after this.
Remember the good old days when companies stuck to just selling their products rather than using their profits to push an agenda? When you invest in a company, you become an owner of that company. And more businesses are now using your money to fund woke projects. We're called to be good stewards of all we have, and that includes ensuring your investments align with your biblical values. Thankfully, that's where Financial Issues can help. For over 25 years, Financial Issues has stood as a leader of biblically responsible investing, encouraging the body of Christ to keep funds out of companies that dishonor God. We provide Christian investors with the tools they need to build fiscally and biblically responsible portfolios. We're at the forefront of the fight, helping you not only with your finances, but advocating for truth and godly wisdom. For more information, go to financialissues.org. That's financialissues.org.
If investing with biblical values is important to you, you're not alone. Millions of people invest their money according to their personal beliefs. That's why we offer a subscription service that gives you access to biblically responsible stocks, buys and sells, and a portfolio tracker tool that tracks your asset allocations. Being a Financial Issues partner is the best way to ensure your investments reflect your values. At Financial Issues, we believe in providing our partners with the best possible information and resources so they can make informed decisions about their money. With our help, you can feel confident that your investments are in line with your personal beliefs. Gain access to our biblically based stock buys and sells for only $132 per year. Invest biblically, responsibly. Go to financialissues.org and become a partner today. That's financialissues.org.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Dean has a great comment here on the website from Ohio. We were referencing yesterday, we had Twyla on the program, and folks were talking about giving to CCH Freedom from an IRA account. Dean said, I noticed there's an option to choose bank account instead of credit card. My brokerage, Dean's brokerage, said that if I enter the routing number and account number shown on the IRA checks, then a contribution from the IRA could be made directly online. Other charities like FISM sometimes have this bank account or e-check option, and it saves some of the credit card fees for the charity. Dean, that's great stuff there, man. Thank you so much, and it's good to always find ways to be able to save a little extra money as you're trying to be generous, which is awesome. So I appreciate that so much, Dean. That's really good stuff there. John is saying, love Dan's timeless wisdom. I do too, John. Man, I still miss him every single day. But I love hearing those words of timeless wisdom from our founder. That's really good. Still time to join if you want, folks. 610-363-1110. Let's get to our ag report today. So I had some comments yesterday. Many of you very graciously told me that I was too fast in my ag report reading. So I'm going to try to slow it down just a little bit for our farmers and ranchers today. But as I said, Craig Halgard is recovering from his surgery. He's doing great. So while he's out, we are going to do our best to fill in for him here. So here's what's going on in the ag market today. So corn finally broke its losing streak. We saw bargain shoppers and fund buying enter the market. So the rally was helped by strong export numbers and a positive weekly ethanol crush number. Seasonally, corn trends higher in the first half of June before tailing off into harvest. July corn was 12 3/4 cents higher at $4.52 per bushel. Meanwhile, the announcement of the proposal of a possibly disruptive export tariff policy by the Brazil government, that spurred a short covering rally as speculators ran for the sidelines. It's interesting to note, Craig tells us, that China has not purchased purchased a single bean from the U.S. for the 2024-2025 marketing year. Very interesting there. July beans were sitting at 22 3/4 cents higher, right at $12. Wheat had a bit of a negative weekly export sale. We actually had more contract cancellations than we had sales. So Minneapolis July wheat was 5 3/4 cents lower at $7.06. Kansas City was 1 3/4 cents lower to close at $6.78. And Chicago was 7 1/4 cents lower at $6.39.5. Meanwhile, cotton futures enjoyed another positive session with the July futures up 100 points. They closed at $75.44. Livestock futures a little bit mixed. August live cattle was 40 cents lower at 177.5 per hundredweight. August feeder cattle dropped by $1. That was $97.5 cents to settle at $252.85 per hundred. And August lean hog futures were a nickel higher. They closed at $91.68 per hundredweight. Finally, Class 3 milk futures saw their loss extended to a second consecutive session. At the close, July futures were down 24 points at $19.91. That's what we're looking like there for our farmers and ranchers. I hope that was helpful for you all. We just got a question that came in here. We're going to get to this one. Austin submitted this question on Ask Shana, and I can address this for you, Austin. Austin is asking about this Texas Stock Exchange that we had mentioned briefly earlier in this week. I think it was a news headline. Just wondering about it from a biblically responsible perspective. Is this something you could foresee impacting partners? And if so, in what way? Austin, thank you for your encouraging words there. God bless the ministry and God bless America. Amen. Austin, truthfully, I don't see it impacting partners as much personally, and here's why. The one thing that we would have to consider is BlackRock is the one that is supporting this, but there are plenty of non-biblically responsible companies infiltrating and supporting the New York Stock Exchange as well. What I see the Texas Stock Exchange coming up as is just a competitor to the New York Stock Exchange, which means you'll find biblically responsible companies and non-biblically responsible companies trading on it. Now, I will say this. I saw a headline earlier this morning, Austin. It's likely that this, and it's still in the fundraising stage right now, so the Texas Stock Exchange has not officially started its trading yet. It's open trading. It's likely not going to start until 2026. So even if it does have an impact on partners, that impact is not going to even begin to be a question until 2 years from now. So, Austin, that's a good question there, and we'll be keeping an eye on that Texas Stock Exchange for sure. But that's the latest news of it right now. Probably not a whole lot to report on it, I would imagine, for at least the next 2 years or so until that starts to get ramped up, if it can. And it looks like it will. I mean, it's got some pretty big support. But, again, anything could happen in 2 years. Goodness, the Lord could return before then. We all say yes and amen to that. But, yeah, Austin, I think it's a good question. We'll be keeping an eye on it for sure. So that's good stuff there. Okay, so I wanted to ask a quick question here as my computer has unfortunately frozen, which is never fun, but we're going to try to fly blind without it here. Anyway, here we go. It just woke back up then. Sometimes technology does that. It's the worst. So as we close our show here, folks, we're in the middle of Pride Month here, and I saw an interesting article that came out I'd love to get in front of your eyes, and I'd love to even hear your thoughts on this. The question the article poses is, how does being transgender affect your personal and family finances? Very interesting here. So this article, we saw it from CNN. It was a joint report, actually, from the National Center for Transgender Equality and the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force. It says transgender Americans are nearly 4 times more likely than the general population to have a household income under $10,000 a year. 4 times as likely. Now, keep in mind, the current federal poverty level, right around $15,000, just above $15,000. If you're below that point, you are technically considered below poverty. The unemployment among the LGBTQ folks is double that of the general population. That's according to a report based on a survey of almost 6,500 respondents who identified as LGBTQ in some sense, specifically transgender or nonconforming. The report was titled Injustice at Every Turn. And in no surprise, I'm sure you can see, it attributes these economic challenges to what they call discrimination against LGBTQ individuals. So we're trying to wrap up this idea of Pride Month and financial issues, folks, and I think we have to see this for what it really is. We see this lesson. This is an object lesson over and over again with the corporations that we're begging to say, please don't get into this nonsense. Just focus on doing your job well. Here's the reason why, and I'm going to surprise you, okay? It's not injustice, all right? It's not injustice, despite what the article might say. The reason why is the same reason why so many companies go broke after going woke. When you put all your efforts into something that does not matter and it doesn't bring any value to you in the end, does nothing to benefit you, you're going to reap the results of that. Here's my guess. Many of these transgender identifying people have put all their efforts into shouting out to the entire world, I am transgender, accept me and love me, instead of, I don't know, going to get a job. Or maybe investing in their portfolio. Or maybe learning a new trade and learning a business skill and starting a business. They're focusing all their efforts on something that is not going to benefit them. And so when that happens, it's no surprise that they're not making a lot of money because they're not putting the work in. I'll give you an example. If I have a goal to get in good shape, but instead of working out and eating right and running and trying to get my heart healthy and all that stuff, if all I focus on is how fat-phobic, and I'm putting that in quotes, radio audience, fat-phobic our society is, and I talk about that and I shout it from the mountaintops, but I don't actually end up doing anything to benefit my physical health, I'm going to remain in poor shape. It's the same idea here. And honestly, folks, I do not want to make light of something that is very sad. Because these poor souls, and that's what they are poor souls who are confused and deceived. They've bought into a lie. They have rebelled against the true and living God, but they've bought into a lie, and it has brought them abject poverty. They are living in poverty because they're focusing on something that will not benefit them both here or in eternity. They're poor souls. They're remaining impoverished because all they're doing is extending their efforts to try to force others to celebrate their sexual perversion. What they should do is they should go and get a job. And they should not talk about their sexual identity. They should go and get a job and they should work hard. And maybe they can learn a skill. And maybe they can make a profit on it. And maybe they have some natural talents. They can start a side business. They can teach music lessons. They can sell jewelry. I don't know. They can do stuff like that. They can learn to invest. They can learn to save. They can steward well. And I will imagine that if they focus on those things and stop hyper-focusing on virtue signaling to everyone around them, maybe they'll get out of poverty. It's a great lesson for us, folks. I think these people are distracted. And what's more, they're distracted by something demonic. That's really what this is. It's demonic. It's no surprise that the end result is negative. They're traveling down a one-way street to spiritual poverty for eternity. The message of biblically responsible investing is not just a message of financial blessing. It's a message of blessing for your whole life because it's rooted in the gospel, like we talked about earlier in the show. So the lesson for us, folks, is don't get distracted with things that don't matter. That's what we're trying to tell these companies. Don't get distracted by the virtue signaling. Don't get distracted by the woke stuff. Just be a good company. Operate in excellence. The same applies to individuals. Operate in excellence. For Christians, we have double reason to operate in excellence because we operate in excellence for the glory of God, who gave us the ability. But even for people who are not Christians, they should see here, operate in excellence and you'll do well. In your investments, though, believer, and I'm talking to believers here, to partners, seek to do well for the glory of God. If that is your main goal, you'll find great success. And that is not a promise that your portfolio will multiply. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. Whether you make a lot of money, whether you make a little bit of money, you will find great success because you are pleasing God. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. It's all that matters at the end of the day, pleasing God. That's what we're trying to help you to do. Well, folks, it was a good show. I appreciate you all, your encouragement, your comments so much. Thank you for joining us today. God willing, we'll do it again next week. I hope you have a wonderful day of worship on Sunday. Shana will be back with us next week, of course. Remember, all that you have belongs to the Lord, so let's be found good and faithful stewards with it. We'll keep you updated next week. We'll give you the updates from the weekend on the financial issues of the day. And of course, we'll also be going on NRB next week as well. Please pray for us as we do that. God bless you all. And Lord willing, we'll talk to you on Monday for more financial issues. We'll see you then.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.